My boss thought his power could silence me, but when I exposed him in front of the whole office, his perfect life collapsed. This is my story. My name is Jennifer, and I am 25 years old. Today was a very important day in my life because it was my first day at a new job. I had recently been hired as a personal assistant at a large and successful company. I was both excited and a little nervous because this job meant a lot to me. My boss is the director of the company, a man named Daniel. Daniel is 42 years old and is known in the office as a very powerful and influential person. Many employees respect him because he is intelligent, confident, and extremely successful in his work. He is also tall and handsome, and he always dresses in elegant and expensive suits that make him look very professional. I had already heard from others that Daniel is married and has a wife and 2 children at home. Getting this position was not easy for me. I worked very hard, studied carefully, and went through several interviews before I was finally chosen. Because of that, I truly wanted to do my best and prove that I deserved the job. My responsibilities were to assist Daniel in his daily work. I needed to organize his schedule, manage his calendar, answer phone calls on his behalf, and write or send important emails for him. I wanted to be organized, responsible, and professional so that he could trust me with important tasks. During my first day, however, I began to notice something that made me feel slightly confused. From time to time, Daniel seemed to look at me more than I expected. Sometimes, when I walked past the door of his office, I could feel his eyes following me. At other moments, when I lifted my head from my computer, I would see that he was watching me quietly from across the room. When our eyes met, he would quickly turn his head and look somewhere else. At the beginning, I did not think too deeply about it. I told myself that this was probably normal. After all, I was the new employee, and he was my boss. Maybe he simply wanted to observe how I worked or make sure that I understood my tasks properly. So I tried to ignore these moments and concentrate on doing my job well. Later that afternoon, Daniel asked me to come into his office. I picked up a few important papers that needed his signature and walked inside. The office was quiet and professional, and Daniel stood up from his chair when I entered. As I approached him to give him the documents, he stepped closer to me, closer than I expected or felt comfortable with. For a moment, the situation felt strange and unfamiliar. Then suddenly, something happened that surprised me. Daniel gently touched my hand. I froze immediately. My heart started beating faster, and my mind became full of confusion. I did not know how to react or what words I should say. Daniel looked directly at me and gave a small smile, but the smile felt unusual and difficult for me to understand. I felt uncomfortable and wanted to step back, yet my body seemed unable to move. I simply stood there in silence. Inside my mind, many worried thoughts appeared. This was my first day at work, and this job was extremely important to me. I depended on this job to pay for my apartment, my food, and my daily life. I was afraid that if I said something wrong or reacted badly, I might lose the opportunity that I had worked so hard to achieve. Because of this fear, I stayed quiet and did not say anything. I did not want to create a problem or make the situation worse. After a few seconds, Daniel finally took the papers from my hands. As soon as he did, I quickly turned around and left his office. When I returned to my desk, my mind was still full of questions and worries. I tried to focus on my work again, but I could not stop thinking about what had just happened. From that moment on, my experience at work began to feel different. I often felt that Daniel was watching me, even when I was simply sitting at my desk or walking past his office. Before that moment, his attention seemed normal, but now it felt strange and uncomfortable. Each time I passed by his door, I had the feeling that his eyes were following me again. I did not understand why he had touched my hand or why he looked at me in that unusual way. All I truly wanted was to do my job well, build my career, and feel safe and respected in my workplace. But now, a small feeling of uneasiness had started to grow inside me, and I did not know what the future would bring. One evening, the workday was almost over and the office had become very quiet. Most of the employees had already packed their things and gone home. I was sitting at my desk, slowly putting my notebook and documents into my bag, ready to leave after a long day. Just as I was about to stand up, Daniel suddenly walked toward my desk. Like before, he stood very close to me, so close that it made me uncomfortable. Then he spoke in a calm voice and said, "Jennifer, don't go home yet. Let's have dinner together. Just you and me." The moment I heard those words, my hands began to shake slightly. I did not want to go with him. Something inside me told me that this was not a good idea. Quickly, I tried to find an excuse. I looked at him and said politely, "Oh, Mr. Daniel, I'm sorry, but I already have plans tonight." Daniel smiled, but his smile felt a little forced. He looked directly into my eyes and replied, "It's important, Jennifer. We need to talk about some work matters. And it is always polite to accept an invitation from your boss." His words made me feel trapped. I was worried that if I refused again, he might become angry or think that I was disrespectful. This job meant everything to me, and I could not risk losing it. After a moment of silence, I slowly agreed to go with him. Soon we were sitting together in a very nice and expensive restaurant. The place was quiet and elegant, with soft lights and calm music playing in the background. At first, I thought we would discuss work as he had said earlier. However, Daniel did not talk about the company, the office, or any tasks. Instead, he kept looking at me in a way that made me feel uncomfortable. After a few minutes, he leaned back in his chair and said softly, "Jennifer, you are a very special person. You are not only beautiful, but also very intelligent. I have met many people in my life, but I have never met anyone quite like you." His words sounded like compliments, but the situation felt strange and wrong. I did not know how to respond. I felt embarrassed and confused, so I simply looked down at my plate and stayed quiet. Then Daniel said something that shocked me completely. He looked at me seriously and said, "Jennifer, I want you to be my lover. No one will ever know about it. It will remain our secret." For a moment, it felt as if the entire world had suddenly stopped. My mind went blank, and I could hardly believe what I had just heard. My boss, a married man with a wife and children, was asking me to have a secret relationship with him. I felt shocked, uncomfortable, and deeply disappointed. After a few seconds, I gathered the courage to speak. I looked at him and said firmly but respectfully, "No, Mr. Daniel. I cannot do that. I am your personal assistant, and this is not right." The moment I said those words, the friendly expression on Daniel's face disappeared. His smile slowly faded, and his eyes became cold and distant. He did not argue or say anything else. The rest of the dinner passed in complete silence. When we finished eating, Daniel drove me back to my apartment. The entire drive was quiet and tense. When we arrived, he did not say goodbye or even look at me. He simply stopped the car, waited for me to get out, and then drove away without another word. That night, I lay in my bed for hours, staring at the ceiling. I tried to sleep, but my mind was full of worry and fear about what might happen the next day. The following morning, when I arrived at the office, I quickly realized that things had changed. Daniel behaved very differently toward me. Suddenly, he began giving me far more tasks than before. My workload seemed to double overnight. I had to answer endless emails, prepare reports, organize meetings, and complete many small tasks all at the same time. Many evenings I was forced to stay late in the office just to finish everything. I felt exhausted almost every day. But the extra work was not the only problem. Daniel also started speaking to me in a harsh and disrespectful way, especially when other employees were nearby. If I made even the smallest mistake, he would criticize me loudly in front of everyone. His voice would become sharp and cold, and the entire office would fall silent while he spoke. Each time it happened, I felt embarrassed and humiliated, yet I stayed quiet because I did not know how to defend myself without risking my job. A few days later, another embarrassing moment happened at the office. One morning, I accidentally placed an important file in the wrong cabinet. It was a small mistake, something that could easily be corrected. However, Daniel reacted very strongly. From across the office, he called my name loudly. "Jennifer," he said in a cold voice, "this is not good enough. You must do better than this." His voice was so loud that everyone in the room stopped working and looked at me. I could feel their eyes on me. My face turned red with embarrassment, and I felt deeply ashamed. Unfortunately, that was not the only time something like this happened. On another day, I prepared a report for an important meeting. I worked very carefully, but I accidentally forgot to include one small detail. During the meeting, Daniel suddenly stopped the discussion and looked directly at me. He told me to stand up in front of everyone. Then he said, "Jennifer needs to pay more attention. This is a very simple job, but she still cannot do it properly." The room became silent, and I could feel the tension in the air. My heart hurt as I stood there, feeling humiliated in front of all my co-workers. I tried my best to remain calm and professional, but inside I felt deeply hurt. After the meeting ended, Daniel spoke to me again. This time his voice was quieter, but his words carried a clear message. He looked at me and said, "You should think about my offer again, Jennifer. Life here could become much easier for you." At that moment, I understood exactly what he meant. Daniel was still angry because I had refused him at the restaurant. Now he was using his power to make my life at work difficult. It felt as if he wanted to punish me and make me suffer until I changed my mind. I began to feel completely trapped. I needed the job to pay my rent, buy food, and support myself. Quitting was not an easy option for me, so every day I forced myself to continue working, even though the environment had become stressful and painful. One evening, I stayed late in the office again, trying to finish a long and complicated report that Daniel had assigned to me. The building was quiet because most employees had already gone home. As I worked at my desk, feeling tired and frustrated, I suddenly looked up toward Daniel's desk. Something there caught my attention. On the corner of his desk was a framed photograph. Curious, I looked at it more closely. It was a picture of Daniel with his family. In the photo, his wife stood beside him, smiling warmly. 2 young children stood in front of them, laughing happily. They looked like a perfect, loving family. For a moment, I just stared at the picture. A heavy feeling filled my heart. I thought about how Daniel had behaved with me and how unfair the situation was not only for me, but also for his wife, who seemed to trust him completely. At that moment, I realized that I could not stay silent anymore. What Daniel was doing was wrong, and someone needed to know the truth. I decided that I would tell his wife everything that had happened. Later that night, I searched through Daniel's contact information to find his wife's phone number. I eventually found it listed under his emergency contacts. My hands trembled as I dialed the number. I felt nervous and unsure, but I knew I had to do it. After a few rings, she answered the phone. Her voice sounded calm and polite. I introduced myself and explained that I worked with Daniel. Then I told her that I needed to speak with her about something important. I asked if we could meet in person. After a moment of hesitation, she agreed. The next evening, we met at a small, quiet cafe. I felt extremely nervous as I sat across from her. Slowly and carefully, I told her everything that had happened. I explained how Daniel had touched my hand in his office, how he had invited me to dinner, and how he had asked me to become his secret lover. I also told her how he had started treating me badly at work after I refused him. As she listened, I noticed her expression changing. At first she seemed surprised, but soon her face became tense and angry. However, the anger in her eyes was not directed at Daniel. It was directed at me. Suddenly she leaned forward across the table and spoke in a sharp voice. "So you tried to steal my husband," she said. "You want to destroy my family." I was shocked by her reaction. I quickly tried to speak and explain that it was not true, that I had refused Daniel and only wanted her to know the truth. But before I could finish my sentence, she interrupted me. She did not give me the chance to explain myself. Before I could say another word, something shocking happened. Daniel's wife suddenly raised her hand and slapped me across the face. For a moment, it felt like my heart stopped beating. The sound of the slap echoed in the quiet cafe, and everyone around us turned to look. My cheek burned with pain, and tears quickly filled my eyes. I felt a deep wave of shame, shock, and anger all at once. I had come there only to tell the truth, but instead I was treated like the guilty person. I could not stay there any longer. I stood up quickly, my hands shaking, and ran out of the cafe while crying. That night, I thought deeply about everything that had happened. I realized that staying silent was no longer an option. The next day, I made a difficult decision. I would tell everyone in the office the truth about Daniel. Later that morning, it was time for the weekly team meeting. All the employees gathered in the conference room, sitting around a large table. Daniel was sitting confidently at the head of the table, just like he always did. My heart was beating very fast, but I knew this was the moment to speak. I stood up from my chair and slowly walked to the center of the room. Everyone looked at me with curiosity and surprise. Taking a deep breath, I began to speak. "Everyone in this office needs to know the real Daniel," I said clearly. The room became completely silent. Then I continued, "Daniel, our boss, has behaved very badly toward me. He touched my hand without my permission. He invited me to dinner alone and asked me to become his secret lover. When I refused, he made my life at work extremely difficult. He gave me too much work, insulted me in front of all of you, and used his power to punish me. I could see the shock on many faces in the room, but I continued speaking. I also told them about my meeting with Daniel's wife. I explained how I had tried to tell her the truth, hoping she would understand what was happening. Instead, she believed that I wanted to steal her husband. I told them how she had slapped me in the cafe while everyone watched. As I spoke, Daniel's face slowly turned red with anger. His eyes looked furious. Suddenly, he stood up and pointed his finger directly at me. In a loud and angry voice, he said, "You are finished here. Your career is over." Then, without waiting for anyone to respond, he turned around, walked out of the conference room, and slammed the door behind him. For a moment, the entire room was silent. I stood there, unsure of what would happen next. But after the meeting ended, something unexpected began to happen. Slowly, other employees started coming to me and sharing their own experiences. Some of them told me that Daniel had treated them badly as well. A few women and even some men explained that they had also felt uncomfortable because of his behavior. Hearing their stories made me realize that I was not alone. Soon, the company's board of directors decided to start a formal investigation. They carefully examined emails, messages, and office records. They spoke privately with many employees and listened to their experiences. Day by day, more information and evidence appeared. Gradually, the truth became clear. The investigation showed that Daniel had abused his position and used his power in very unfair ways. In the end, the company made a final decision. Daniel was fired from his job. He was no longer the director of the company. When the news became public, his personal life also changed dramatically. His wife decided to leave him because she could not stay in the marriage after learning everything that had happened. Daniel's reputation was completely destroyed, and the powerful life he once had disappeared. As for me, I finally felt safe again. The fear and pressure that had followed me for weeks slowly began to disappear. However, I also felt a small sadness inside my heart. I had never wanted to destroy someone's life, even if that person had hurt me. All I ever wanted was to protect myself, keep my job, and work in a place where I could feel respected. Weeks passed, and life slowly returned to normal. I continued working as an assistant, focusing on my responsibilities and doing my best every day. Little by little, I began to feel hopeful again. I knew that my future was still in my hands, and I was determined to build a better and stronger life for myself. This is my story. It was painful, but it also taught me the importance of courage, honesty, and standing up for what is right. If you liked this story, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to support the channel.